African.
We will start with a figure called the rook. Normally in the township, or many people would call it a castle, but in the language of chess, it should be a rook. Right? And the rook is placed, if it is white, and we all know that white is placed on the rank 1 and 2. So the rook will be on the extreme side on A1, and the other one will be on H1. And you must remember that the A, B, C, D, and 1 to 8 are meant to enable people to develop the language of chess, which is called chess notation, so that you can then use the chess notation, 1, to record the game, so that you can go back and see how you lost or how you won the game. It also helps you to be able to study your own game. It helps others so that they can study your game and maybe improve on what you have done or learn from the game you have played. Now, let's look at how the rook moves. If you look at the rook, I always tell children that you think of a plus sign. You think of a plus sign. A rook will travel horizontally in a straight line or vertically in a straight line. It is limitless in terms of the distance it can take. It can move from here to there. It can move to E, it can go down, it can go horizontal, it can go right here, and as long as there is no piece in front of it, because it is not allowed to jump, then you can go as far as you can. Then comes the bishop. The bishop is always placed on 1C and F1. C1 and F1. And you always have two bishops in a game. One will always occupy the white block and will stay on the white block. So the path or the road that the bishop travels is always the white bishop on a white square is always white. And the bishop on a black square will always travel on the black squares. So there is no way that this bishop will find itself here. It will always travel this way, and that's diagonal, always diagonal, and never vertical, and never horizontal. And it will always follow the black blocks. And if you look at the board, all the white blocks, if you follow them, are diagonal. All the black blocks are also diagonal. So we have the 2 here. Right. The white one will do exactly what the black bishop does. And normally, when I talk about the bishop, in order to make it very interesting for the kids, I always ask, who is the most known bishop in South Africa? Right? And kids will also, I know Bishop Tutu, and some will say, I know Bishop Luhanyan from the traditional churches, which is the biggest church in South Africa, and many people around here belong to that church. So you talk about something they can identify with when you talk about bishop. You can also say the kings are always blessed by the bishops, right? So they pray for the king and the queen to live long. Right? we are going to go to the next one. The next one would be the queen. The white queen will always sit on a white chair. And this chair is the block, that's D1. So you can't find the queen sitting on the black chair. It never happens. So I'm talking about the original position. So you would have the same thing, a black queen sitting on a black seat and never sitting on a white seat. Now, what is very interesting about the queen is that the queen's moves are a combination of two pieces. So the queen would combine the moves of the rook and the moves of a bishop. Now, we all know, or we have talked about, the bishop always travels diagonally. That's the bishop. But we have also learned that the rook will always travel in a straight line vertically and in a straight line horizontally. So if you look at the diagram here, if this is the queen, then the queen has a lot of option, especially if the queen is in the center. It can go a different direction, diagonal, horizontal, and vertical. And the queen is very powerful. It's like the woman in the house. You know, when your child wakes up in the morning every day and he has misplaced his tie, his school tie, he doesn't run to the father and say, "Dad, where's my school tie?" He runs to the mother and says, "I don't see where my tie is," because the queen is the most powerful person in the household. The mother knows everything. The mother controls everything in the house. Although the dad pays, the mother directs, right? So we have learned the queen has combination of two pieces, the bishop and the rook. We will then come to the king. Detlef said the other day, the king is a very dignified individual. As a result, the king walks very, very slow. A dignified person is always preceded by other people. He comes right at the end and he walks very slow because the king is always served. As you can see, all the other pieces in the chessboard are meant to serve the king. The king is always placed on block E. In this case, if it is a white king, it will be on E1. Right? And the white king always sits on a black chair, unlike the queen, right, who sits at the same color block as the queen is. But the king is a bit different. A white king will always sit on a black square. Now, very interestingly, we just said the king is very slow. The king can only move one step at a time in every direction. In every direction. It means the king can move diagonal, vertical, and horizontal, but only one step at a time.